3 minutes ago, Senator John Kennedy asked Kash Patel the simplest question imaginable: have you seen the Epstein files? And in the next 8 minutes, Kennedy used that one simple question to build a case so airtight that Patel's entire defense collapsed on live television. Not with accusations, not with theories, with access logs, phone records, timestamps, and one devastating timeline that Patel couldn't explain. If you're new here, subscribe immediately and turn notifications on, because what you're about to see is a masterclass in how to dismantle someone using nothing but their own records. Watch until the end, because when Kennedy asks his final question, on whose behalf were you acting, and Patel can't answer, you'll understand why this changes everything. Senate Judiciary Committee. The hearing had been going on for hours. Everyone was tired. The senators were tired of asking questions. The journalists were tired of taking notes. Even the cameramen were tired of filming. Kash Patel, on the other hand, was relieved, because he'd managed to evade the most dangerous senators: Raskin, Goldman, Ted Lieu. They'd all taken their shots, and Patel had survived. But there was still someone he hadn't faced yet. John Kennedy, Republican from Louisiana, Trump ally. No one was worried about him. Patel certainly wasn't. That was his biggest mistake. For those who don't know Kennedy, Yale Law School, Oxford University, former law professor. He speaks with a southern drawl so thick you'd think he never left the bayou. But don't let that fool you. Kennedy is a master of what lawyers call controlled examination. He already knows the answers to his questions before he asks them. Each question is planned, each answer anticipated. You don't bring down the other side. The other side brings itself down with its own words, and Kennedy masterfully uses this technique. But people generally don't notice it, because he's always calm, always polite. A smile never leaves his face. He talks as if he's just chatting, but in reality he's working his game. When Kennedy took the microphone, Patel's shoulders relaxed. Finally, someone who wasn't an enemy. Kennedy looked at his folder, slowly turned the pages, scanned the lines with his eyes, then lifted his head and smiled. Director Patel, I'd like to start with something very simple. In fact, perhaps this is the simplest question in this entire investigation. He paused. Have you seen the Epstein files? Patel wasn't expecting this question at all. The other senators had asked detailed questions. Who ordered what? Why did you stop? Who are the 47 names? But Kennedy was starting from scratch. Senator, I reviewed the summaries of the Epstein files. No, Kennedy cut him off, but gently. I didn't ask about summaries. I asked, have you seen the Epstein files? With your hands, with your eyes. Patel paused. For the first time in that hearing room, he actually thought before answering. Senator, the files are in our electronic system. Director Patel. Kennedy raised his hand. A small movement, but enough. I asked you a very simple question, and you're talking to me about systems. He stopped. There is a room at FBI headquarters, a physical room, and in that room there are Epstein files. Kennedy pulled out a page. This is the FBI's internal security records, access logs for physical file rooms. He held it up, and here there's a line that says Epstein Physical Archive Room, Room 714, FBI Headquarters, B2 floor. He looked at Patel. Is this room real? Patel's jaw tightened slightly. Yes. Beautiful. And are there physical Epstein files in this room? Yes. Kennedy nodded slowly. Have you ever been in room 714? The room suddenly fell silent. Everyone understood that this question seemed innocent, but no matter what the answer was, it would be damaging. If he says yes, what did you see? Why didn't you take action? If he says no, the FBI director hasn't seen the most important files in his own building. If you're still watching, like this video right now. This needs to reach more people. Comment below, what did he see in room 714? Because what Kennedy reveals next answers that question. When Patel didn't respond, Kennedy waited. It was a long wait. Then he slowly shook his head. Okay, let's assume you didn't enter. Were you officially briefed on the Epstein files? Patel thought carefully. Standard procedure, yes. Yes or no, Director? Were you officially briefed? Yes. When? In the first week of my tenure. First week, Kennedy repeated. Great. He pulled out another page. This is the FBI's new director onboarding records. First week briefing list. He projected it onto the screen. And here on the Epstein briefing line, there's a note. Briefing completed. Director acknowledged receipt of all files, including physical archive access. Room 714. He looked at Patel. Director Patel, this record states that you were granted access to room 714. Access granted. But you're saying you didn't enter. Patel's lead attorney leaned over and whispered something. Senator, Granting access is different from physically entering. Yes, Kennedy immediately agreed. You're absolutely right. Different things. As if he was supporting Patel. Okay, then let me ask you this. Kennedy pulled out another page. These looked more technical. This is the FBI's digital access records, a system that records which file each authorized person accessed, when and from where. He paused. And here, Director Patel, there's something interesting. He held up the page. February 3, 2025, morning, 7:34 a.m. FBI Director's Office, Terminal 4471, access to Epstein Master File. Kennedy stopped, waited a moment. Terminal 4471, is that your personal terminal? The room fell silent instantly. Patel was trying to remain calm, but his clenched jaw was visible to the cameras. Yes, so on February 3, 2025, at 7:34 a.m., the Epstein Master File was accessed from your personal terminal. Kennedy leaned forward. And when I just asked you if you'd seen the files, you said you'd only reviewed summaries. He paused. Director Patel, what were you doing at 7:34 a.m. that morning? Patel wanted to speak, but couldn't utter a single word. Kennedy continued to wait, maintaining the smile on his face. Director, let me tell you one more thing. February 3, 2025. Does this date sound familiar? Patel swallowed with difficulty. This is the day you signed the directive that halted all Epstein investigation activities. Kennedy put the page down on the table. 7:34 a.m. Access to Epstein Master File. Afternoon, 2:30 p.m. Investigation suspension directive. He paused. You saw the file in the morning. You closed the investigation in the afternoon. Kennedy slowly shook his head. So you saw that file, Director Patel, and after seeing it you shut it down. The room was silent. Patel's lead attorney wanted to stand up, but Kennedy raised his hand. 1 minute, counselor. Your client still hasn't responded. Kennedy turned to Patel. Why did you stop it? Patel remained silent. Why? Kennedy repeated the question, no judgment in his voice. I'm not here to pressure you, but there's a truth here, and that truth is very simple. You opened a file in the morning. You closed it in the afternoon. Why? Patel remained silent. Kennedy sat there for a while, then slowly shook his head. Okay, then let's approach this from another angle. Director Patel, before 7:34 a.m. on February 3rd, who did you speak with that day? Patel paused. Here, let me help you. Kennedy pulled out another page. These are the phone records from the same day, between the White House and the FBI Director's Office. Morning, 6:15 to 6:48 a.m. White House National Security Council called the Director's Office. He paused. You received a call at 6:15. You looked at the Epstein Master File at 7:34. Kennedy stopped. Phone call first, file access second, and then the directive. 3 steps, same day, same timeline. He looked at Patel. What did they say to you on that phone call, Director? Patel opened his mouth but closed it again without saying a word. His lawyer leaned over and whispered something. Everyone knew what was coming. Executive privilege. Kennedy raised his hand. Director Patel, I want to ask you carefully, because this phrase has been used repeatedly in this hearing. Executive privilege protects conversations with the president. That's true. But I want to ask you this. Can executive privilege be used to close an investigation? Patel said nothing, because here's what's happening. Kennedy tapped the table slowly with his fingertips. The White House called. You opened the Epstein file. Then you closed the investigation. This isn't a decision, Director. This is an order. He paused. Executive privilege can protect a conversation, but it cannot protect an order, because the order is on the record. Kennedy closed his files and put them on the edge of the desk. He looked at Patel for a long time. Director Patel, I'm going to ask you one last question, and you need to answer this question, because if you don't, the phone records, the access records and the directive, all made on the same day, will speak, and they speak worse than I do. No sound came from the room. Kennedy asked calmly, slowly and clearly, making every word understandable. Director Patel, after you saw that file, when you signed that directive, on whose behalf were you acting? Patel's eyes locked onto Kennedy's. Everyone in the room was waiting for an answer. Patel opened his mouth. Executive. No. Kennedy slowly raised his hand. Executive privilege isn't a name, Director. I want a name. Patel couldn't say anything. His mouth fell open. His eyes slowly drifted down. The silence at that moment explained everything, because not answering was also an answer. Kennedy slowly leaned back. He closed his file, and he turned to the entire room. American people, are you hearing this? February 3, 2025. The White House called at 6:15 a.m. The Epstein file was opened at 7:34. The investigation closed at 2:30 p.m. same day, same timeline, same directive. Kennedy paused. This isn't a conspiracy theory. This is the record. This is the phone log. This is the access log. This is the signature. And Kash Patel, just now, here under oath, couldn't deny any of these records. Subscribe right now, because this story isn't over. Kennedy has those records. He has the timestamps. He has the phone logs. And he's not done asking questions. The hearing technically continued after that. Other senators asked other questions. None of it mattered, because John Kennedy had just done something extraordinary. He didn't accuse. He didn't speculate. He just asked questions and presented records. Have you seen the files? Yes. Terminal 4471 7:34 a.m. Who called you? White House 6:15 a.m. What did you do after? Closed investigation. 2:30 p.m. On whose behalf? No answer. 3 minutes. That's all it took. 3 minutes to show that Kash Patel accessed the Epstein files, received a call from the White House the same morning, and shut down the investigation that same afternoon. No theories, just timestamps. And one question Patel couldn't answer. On whose behalf were you acting? His silence said everything. Share this video everywhere. This timeline needs to reach everyone who cares about whether the FBI serves the law or serves power. The facade is broken. The records are clear. And Kash Patel just learned that when someone like John Kennedy has the receipts, silence isn't a defense, it's a confession. Stay tuned. And here's what makes Kennedy's examination even more devastating than it appears. He didn't just catch Patel in one lie. He built a prosecutorial timeline that any federal prosecutor would recognize as evidence of obstruction. Element 1: Access to evidence February 3, 2025, 7:34 a.m. Terminal 4471. Patel personally accessed the Epstein Master File. This isn't disputed. It's in the FBI's own digital access logs. Element 2: External communication. Same day, 6:15 to 6:48 a.m. White House National Security Council called the FBI Director's Office. 33-minute call, 1 hour and 19 minutes before Patel accessed the files. Element 3: Action taken same day, 2:30 p.m. Patel signed a directive halting all Epstein investigation activities. 7 hours after accessing the files, 8 hours after the White House call. That's not coincidence. That's a pattern. And Kennedy documented every single step with official records that Patel couldn't dispute. But here's the legal significance that most people missed. When Kennedy asked on whose behalf were you acting, he wasn't asking out of curiosity. He was establishing mens rea, criminal intent. Because if Patel closed an investigation based on the evidence in the files, he would say so. I reviewed the materials and determined there was insufficient basis to continue. But if Patel closed an investigation based on instructions from someone else, someone whose interests would be served by shutting it down, that's a different matter entirely. That's potential obstruction of justice under 18 U.S.C. Section 1519, destroying, altering, or concealing records or documents with intent to obstruct an investigation, and Patel's refusal to answer on whose behalf suggests he knows that answering truthfully would be legally damaging. You don't invoke executive privilege to protect a legitimate law enforcement decision. You invoke it to protect a politically motivated one. Kennedy also did something brilliant by starting with the simplest possible question. Have you seen the files? Because Patel's initial answer, I reviewed the summaries, was immediately contradicted by the access logs showing he opened the full master file. That established that Patel was willing to lie under oath about basic facts, which made every subsequent answer suspect. The Room 714 question was equally clever. By asking about physical access to the archive room, Kennedy created a trap. Either Patel had been there and seen things he wasn't acting on, or he hadn't been there and was running an investigation without reviewing the evidence. Both answers are bad. So Patel tried to deflect to electronic systems, and Kennedy used that deflection to introduce the terminal access logs. Every question Kennedy asked had a purpose. Every answer, or non-answer, moved the case forward. This is what prosecutors call building a record. You establish facts one by one, each fact supporting the next, until the pattern becomes undeniable. Call at 6:15 a.m. File accessed at 7:34 a.m. Investigation closed at 2:30 p.m. Timeline: ironclad. Records: official FBI logs. Contradiction: Patel's own testimony versus documentary evidence. Unanswered question: on whose behalf? That's a federal case waiting to be made, and Kennedy built it in 8 minutes using nothing but questions and publicly available records. The legal community has already noted that Kennedy's questioning could serve as a template for how to conduct oversight hearings that actually produce actionable evidence, rather than political theater. He didn't grandstand. He didn't make speeches. He asked precise questions, presented official records, records, and let Patel's evasions speak for themselves. And the final question, on whose behalf were you acting, is the one that's going to haunt Patel. Because every American watching that hearing knows what the answer is. Patel was acting on behalf of whoever called him at 6:15 that morning, whoever told him to look at those files, whoever wanted that investigation shut down. He just can't say it out loud, because saying it would be admitting that he used his position as FBI director to protect someone from criminal investigation. And that's not just a political scandal, that's a federal crime. Kennedy didn't just expose Patel, he built a prosecutable case against him, with timestamps, with phone logs, with access records, all presented calmly, methodically, with that Louisiana smile that never left his face. Have you seen the Epstein files? 8 words that led to 8 minutes that may have just ended Kash Patel's career, not with accusations, with evidence, and one question he couldn't answer. On whose behalf were you acting? The silence told everyone exactly whose behalf it was. Stay tuned.